Good evening, this is Drewatron and I'm going to be talking about the winter update patch for Battlefield 1. So there's quite a lot of changes. You got some ribbons now, however medals are still that annoying selectable thing that both ruin your individual performance and your team contribution by skewing your gameplay and making you do illogical things. Class rank cap is now 50 instead of 10, good damn. Some weapons now in Elite Codex, server updates, kicking, banning, vote maps, blah blah. But what I'm really interested in is the weapon changes. So that's what I'm really going to be talking about today. Now, many other weapons have changed, but I'm just going to concentrate on the more significant changes. There's a lot of things that have had their horizontal recoils tweaked, etc. But today I will talk about the Selbstlader 1906, the Martini-Henry, the Pieper carbine, which is that revolver carbine you get as a pilot or a tanker, and I'll be talking about the Model 10 Slug too. And just a little quick bit on the MLE-1903 and the 1903 Experimental. So let's start with the Selbstlader 1906. This was a gun for which a lot of people were crying out for a buff. Well, here it is. Kind of. You'll see what I mean by that a bit later. But anyway, a lot of the people who were crying out for a buff on this I don't think are going to be entirely satisfied. I saw a lot of crazy suggestions in forums about increasing the capacity, improving the damage, giving it crazy headshot multipliers. All of it was pretty ridiculous, really. People were basically asking for a god gun, and I'm glad that DICE didn't go down this route. I mean, I didn't really think they would, but anyway. My personal opinion on this gun was that you didn't really need to do anything to it other than give it a partial reload checkpoint. But let's talk about what they actually have done. As soon as you use this gun, it's pretty obvious that DICE have changed the animation because the stripper clip is now invisible. Other things I noticed is that the toggle lock mechanism stays up in your face for a bit longer before you start the reload. Kind of annoying, but not the worst thing in the world. But the most significant change is that the gun no longer kicks to the right when you shoot it. Have a look at this old footage to see what I mean. So in Battlefield 1, the animated recoil and the actual recoil don't always tie up. So some guns will appear to recoil more than they actually do. A good example is the C93, where the gun just seems to kick like crazy, but it actually doesn't recoil that much. With the 1906, the actual recoil was symmetrical and very small in the horizontal axis, but the animation showed a very pronounced sideways kick to the right, which you could essentially ignore for stationary targets, but with moving targets you really need to be patient and let the animation recenter, otherwise you'd have a lot of difficulty landing your shots. Now the patch notes say that the Selbstlader 1906 has improved aimed accuracy, reduced recoil and decreased spread. So what the patch notes suggest to me is that this gun should now be more spammable at longer ranges. So I was curious to find out if I could land hits on long range targets at a higher pace than I could previously. However, if anything, I felt like I had to reduce the pace of my shots to land hits on long range targets. Luckily Simtic have updated their stats now, so I had a look at what's going on. So yes, the starting spread has been reduced and the spread increase rate is also reduced. However, the recoil hasn't actually changed. It's just the animation that has changed. But what has changed is the recoil recovery rate. The gun used to recover from recoil 50% quicker than it does now. What that means is, despite the gun being more accurate, i.e. the bullets going where you're aiming them, if you're trying to hit a target that's very small, either because it's far away, behind cover, or lying prone, you actually have to wait for longer between shots. Otherwise the recoil will throw your aim off. So from a technical standpoint, this gun might actually be worse. But theoretical performance and real-world performance aren't the same thing. In reality, now that the animation doesn't kick to the right, it's much easier to keep your iron sights over the target, especially if the target moves. And for well-exposed targets, i.e. those that are standing out in the open, you can probably black your trigger finger faster than before. But if your target is behind cover or prone, you'll have to take your time more. So just to summarise, on balance, I feel like changes to the spread and recoil mechanics are in fact positive, despite the fact that you could argue the gun has actually received a nerf. Now, back on the topic of animated recoil, the next guns I'm going to talk about have all had it removed entirely, so you're only left with the actual recoil. I'm talking about the MLE-1903, the Pieper carbine? I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. It's the revolver carbine you get as a pilot or tanker, and the 1903 Experimental. Now of all of these, I think the biggest one to benefit is the Pieper. Before it was practically unusable because follow-up shots were insanely difficult. This thing had tons of animated recoil, not to mention actual recoil. Take a look.
Oh my lord! The recoil on this thing.
Now that you can actually make follow-up shots more easily, it's a pretty decent gun. Low rate of fire, but a 3-shot kill out to about 20-22 meters, depending on exactly where your shots fall. Still, you need to be careful with your aim. That low rate of fire does make it slightly punishing if you miss. Now, as for the M1903, I don't think the animated recoil really had any effect on combat outcomes in my opinion. But perhaps DICE have tried to buff it because they've also fixed what they're calling a tiered reload. So I hadn't actually realised that this was bugged before, and I'm guessing a tiered reload is perhaps something to do with how quickly the gun reloads, depending on how full it is. All I know is that now the reload does seem somewhat slower than I remembered. In fact, it's so slow that I think I'm probably just going to stop using it. But I'm someone who tends to use my pistol a lot, so if you're someone who doesn't really tend to use your pistol a lot, perhaps you'll be less bothered by the slow reload. As for the 1903 Experimental, well, I'll admit that I do have a soft spot for this gun, and perhaps it has benefited slightly from this last patch. But the thing is, the iron sights are still the same, the Pedersen device hasn't got any smaller, so the sight picture is still horrible. The gun does a fantastic job of basically blocking your view of whatever it is you're shooting at. So let's talk about the Martini-Henry. This gun has been rebalanced so that it has a higher peak damage value of 112. The gun still retains the original damage it had of 100 at 30 meters, but instead of leveling off there, it just keeps climbing linearly until a range of 42 meters, where it then levels off until it starts falling again at 68 meters. Basically what this means is that you'll still have the same pre-patch sweet spot mechanic where you'll land a one-hit kill by hitting the upper body or head between 30 and 80 meters. But in addition, you can also make a one-hit kill between 42 and 68 meters, even if you hit the stomach, upper arms, or shoulders. So it just makes it a little bit more forgiving between those ranges. If you remember, this gun was originally very easy to land one-hit kills with, and then the modifiers were nerfed or corrected, depending on your opinion, so that you'd only one-hit kill if you landed your shot on the upper chest or head. And this really took away most of the appeal of the weapon, pretty much killing it off. So overall, I think this change is a nice approach to rebalancing the gun. Before the original nerf, it was my go-to scout rifle, since I like to play on or close to the objective most of the time. However, I'll have to play with it a little bit more before I can decide whether or not I can justify using the Martini-Henry over the Gewehr M95 infantry or the Assembly carbine that I've started using as my close-range choices since the original Martini nerf. The M95 has a very high up-close damage, making it more consistent to do one-shot finishes with weaker pistols such as the Frommer. Not to mention it has a great rate of fire suited to close-range encounters with multiple enemies, and it won't punish you as badly for missing your first shot. The Assembly carbine has a pretty decent sweet spot mechanic, good hipfire accuracy, and is easy to aim, making it a very versatile run-and-gun tool for mixed-range use. Whether or not the Martini can really fit in there somewhere, I think will depend on whether or not I start landing a significant amount of one-hit kills with it. I'll probably end up pairing it with the No. 3 revolver most of the time, as it's a pretty capable weapon in its own right, and it's a safe bet that if you land a non-lethal blow with the Martini that you'll be doing a one-shot finisher with this pistol most of the time. The fast reload also balances the single shot capacity of the Martini for when the pressure is on. Okay, let's talk about shotguns. The most interesting changes are to the Model 10A Slug. This gun has been buffed big time. In Battlefield 1 I was very disappointed in the performance of the only shotgun slug option, having come from my previous experience of Battlefield 3 where slugs were incredibly effective. The winter patch has definitely shifted the Model 10 Slug into a position where I'm a whole lot more likely to consider using it. So what's changed? The Model 10 Slug now has less aim down sight spread and a higher velocity slug, making long range shots much easier to land. And instead of pulling to the right, recoil is now centre biased, which helps with follow-up shots at all ranges. Additionally, it's now a one-hit kill out to a slightly increased range of 11 meters when hitting the head or chest, and, this is the crucial change for me, it's also a one-hit kill out to 8 meters when hitting the stomach or upper arms. Essentially, this makes it a lot more consistent and reliable at close range. The real crux issue with the Slug was definitely its close range consistency. All too often I would need more than one hit to kill someone up close, and given that consistently one hit killing someone up close is the main reason to choose a shotgun over any other type of gun, it made the Model 10 Slug rather unappealing compared with practically any other shotgun. Essentially, the reason you choose a Slug is if you wanted to be able to kill people at longer ranges, but at the expense of having to be more accurate at close range. Now, with the way that assault players have been given a very close-ranged focus in Battlefield 1, I think DICE were right not to give the assault players something that could dominate at longer ranges. But I think they just went a little bit too far in neutering the Slug in both its long and short range capabilities. Now it's a lot better, but the gun isn't so easy to use that I'm willing to make it my go-to shotgun, as perhaps a shotgun with Slug rounds would have been in Battlefield 3. Which is a good thing. If I'm questioning which gun to use, it means there's some nice weapon balancing going on. And this gun is still a skill cannon, so I'll need a lot more practice to get really effective with it. But now that the close range performance has been addressed and the long range capabilities have been tweaked, I feel like that's an endeavour worth undertaking, whereas before, due to the inconsistent performance, especially up close, there was no motivation to bother. So, good one, DICE. So that completes my roundup for this video. I hope you found that useful and have enjoyed listening. Subscribe and give me a like if you want to hear more.